A few videos are going to use this same sample study, so I'm going to introduce the study right now. Let's assume that we're doing a study where we're looking at the relationship between alcohol and speech. Now let's assume we do this as an actual experiment. So we're going to bring 10 people into our laboratory. We're going to randomly assign them to one of two groups. They're either going to get 0 drinks or they're going to get 2 drinks. After we assign them to groups, we're going to give them their treatment. In the one group, they get nothing to drink, and in the other group, let's say we give them 2 beers. And after they consume their alcohol, or in this case, don't consume their alcohol, we have them read some tongue twisters. And we count how many mistakes they make reading the tongue twisters. All right, so that's the study. They've got 0 or 2 drinks, they drank or don't, they read tongue twisters, and these numbers represent the number of mistakes they make reading those tongue twisters. So in the 0 drinks group, the average number of mistakes is 2, and in the 2 drinks group, the average number of mistakes is 13. All right, so this particular video is going to talk about how to write a research hypothesis. So down here is the definition of a research hypothesis. Basically, a research hypothesis is a prediction about the outcome of a study. All right, so it's what you think is going to happen. Now, if I ask you to define the term hypothesis, this is one of those things where in elementary, middle, and high school, they really did a good job of hammering down the point. A research hypothesis is an educated guess. That is true. The way we're going to think about it in here is it's a prediction about the outcome of your study, which is just a more sophisticated way of saying an educated guess. So for most of this class, for most of the rest of this class, these are the guidelines that you need to follow when writing a research hypothesis. So a research hypothesis needs to mention both your independent and dependent variable, and it needs to be written in statement form. So if you've done this in K through 12, it's possible that you've written research hypotheses in the form of a question. We are not doing that in here. We are going to write them in terms of a statement. All right, so no questions, statements. So let's go back to this study. We're looking at the relationship between alcohol and speech. So before we write this hypothesis, we need to identify our independent and dependent variables. So remember, an independent variable we can think of as the cause. Again, I use that term loosely, but we can think of it as the cause. And a dependent variable we can think of as the effect. So in this study, which variable is the cause? Is alcohol the cause or is speech the cause? And hopefully you guys can all agree with me that alcohol is the cause, which makes speech the effect. All right, so alcohol is our independent and speech is our dependent. So in writing a research hypothesis, basically you are going to write a prediction about what you think is going to happen in this study. And there's really no right or wrong prediction. You could make a prediction that I think is completely ridiculous, but as long as you follow the rules for writing the prediction, that's a good prediction. So let's kind of brainstorm about different ways that we could predict the outcome of this study. So before I tell you some of my ways, I want you to think for a second about what you might say in terms of a prediction. All right, so hopefully you've thought of something. So I'm just going to talk out loud about some of the different ways that we could make predictions about this study, and then I'm going to write what I think is a good sample. All right, so we might say something like people who drink 2 drinks will make more mistakes than people who have no drinks. All right, reasonable prediction. We might say that people that drink a lot make a lot of mistakes. We might say that people that don't drink will do well on the tongue twisters. All right, think about all those predictions I just gave. In each one of those predictions, did I talk about alcohol and did I talk about speech? Yeah, sometimes I referred to alcohol as drinks. Sometimes I referred to it as drinking. With speech, sometimes I referred to it as speech. Sometimes I referred to it as mistakes. As long as we mention those terms, as long as we mention something about the independent and dependent, we're in good shape. All right, so any of those predictions work. Hopefully you were able to come up with a prediction that worked as well. I have kind of a shortcut for doing predictions, and you can use this. Again, this is going to be for most of the semester. It'll change up a little bit when we get towards the end, and of course I will alert you to the change. But basically for most of the semester, you could use the following kind of shortcut. Independent variable affects dependent variable. Now, I'm going to expect you to fill in the actual independent and dependent variables, but this kind of prediction where you mention your independent, you insert this term affects, and then you mention your dependent, this is a perfectly reasonable prediction, research hypothesis that you can use in this class. So in the case of this study, we could say, oops, oh my goodness, what am I doing here? In the case of this study, we could say alcohol affects speech. Alcohol affects speech. And that mentions the independent, it mentions the dependent, it's written in statement form, and this is a perfectly good hypothesis. Now, that doesn't mean you can't give a more elaborate one. Is it perfectly fine for you to say the more you drink, the worse you do? People that drink 2 drinks are going to make more mistakes than people that drink 0 drinks. Those are great hypotheses, and if you like to write them that way, by all means go ahead. But if you like to just get right to the point and use as few words as possible, you can say alcohol affects speech, and that is a perfectly good research hypothesis. All right, so again, a research hypothesis must mention both the independent and dependent variables, and it must be written in statement form. Okay, so before I close this video, let's just think of a couple of other studies that we might do and how we might write those research hypotheses using this same guideline. So let's say we were interested in the relationship between color and mood. The research hypothesis in this format would be color affects mood. Let's say we were interested in the relationship between temperature and aggression. The research hypothesis would be temperature affects aggression. All right, so if you remember these guidelines, if you use this shortcut, you will be able to write research hypotheses all semester long, no problem.